The Hispanics are a force to be reckoned with. It's growing in terms of the electorate, and they're incredibly motivated. Look at Talarico. Look at what he did. He engaged early, he engaged right, he had the right message, he connected with the events that Hispanics care about, sports, music, that resonated really well. They showed up, he won. So why wait?
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Latino Vote podcast, coming from you live, Mike Madrid, from Washington, D.C., where it's going to be 85 degrees today. No more snowcrete in Washington, D.C. Summer is here. We're looking, the birds are singing. It's a beautiful day. Well, we're at war. The economy's shit, and gas is $5 a gallon. But other than that, it's wonderful.
Other than that, it's wonderful. Yeah, it's beautiful here on the West Coast, too. I was in Los Angeles yesterday. I had lunch with our friends at NALEO, the National Association of Latino Elected Officials.
Oh, I love NALEO.
Yeah, talking about their annual conference coming up in July. We'll be talking a little bit more about that. But it was gorgeous down there. We got off the plane down in Burbank Airport, and I just realized how much I miss Southern California. The sun hits a little bit differently that way. It was a perfect day. But yeah, here we are. Otherwise perfect day. The weather's great. Let's just stick with what works.
Look, every time I go to Southern California, I'm like, oh my God, this is why when folks got out here on the wagons, they were like, shit, I'm staying right here because it is nice. It don't get hot. It don't get cold. And I am liking it a lot. We have a special show for you today. We have some very important guests, or maybe just one very important guest. We talk a lot about on this program, the importance of getting to the community and talking to the community. We've just got through going through this whole Texas exercise. We've been talking about what went on in New Jersey. We've talked about what's coming up in California in the governor's race. There's one corporation that's going to play a huge role in the way that people, politicians, consultants actually reach and talk to our community. Today, we are honored to be joined by the CEO of TelevisaUnivision, who's going to be here, Daniel Alegre. Thanks for being here, brother.
It's a pleasure to be here. Mike, Chuck, big fans of everything that you do, and obviously how you support the Latino voice, which is so incredibly important to everything that happens in the U.S.
Look, it's not lost on me and Mike. We have a rule. We've been doing this podcast, what, Mike, 4 years?
A long time.
We have never had a white person. We're going to continue that now with another good Mexican, 3 Mexicans, one in a cowboy hat, one in a suit, and one in a black T-shirt. God's sakes, Mike, you could have put on a collared shirt for the CEO.
Should have dressed up a little bit for CEO.
My bad. But look, what we want to talk about is about what's coming up and what do we see in these elections. Daniel has a bird's eye view of who's advertising, how they're advertising. But what I really want to get into later is not the political advertising. Every day, folks are paying his stations to talk to our community. I think there's things that politicians and groups are missing there. But before we get that started, it's, again, not lost on me that I know you were born in Mexico. Now you're the CEO of this big corporation. Can you please tell our viewers how a kid in Mexico ends up being the CEO of the largest Latino network in the country?
Well, I'll start with just a minor correction. I was actually born in the great state of Texas.
Oh, not bad. I love you even more now, Daniel. Now we outnumber Madrid.
I'm the youngest of 4, and my mother happened to be visiting a doctor in Houston, and something I liked, and I decided to come out a month early. So I'm the only U.S. born of my siblings, and it's a very typical story of immigrants here in the United States. My growing up in Mexico City, I remember looking up the TV screen and watching Televisa content, Chavo del Ocho, Jacobo Zabludowski would do the news, and my parents would watch. And it was just such an iconic company, and the content that we connected with it. And my father wanted us to have a more diverse life, learn English. So he actually sent us over the border. He stayed in Mexico, and my mother and my brothers and I came over to this side. And it was I guess now it's a quarter of my life in Mexico City, and then the rest of my life both here and then lived in Asia and other different places. But my experience that I had growing up was such that I understood what it was like to be a foreigner. I barely spoke English when we first moved here. and we learn to assimilate, learn to try to fit in. But at the same time, you are so proud of your roots and so proud of everything that is you. And I mentioned that I started watching Televisa content. I could never have imagined a few years later, I'm not going to reveal my true age, but a few years later, that I would be running TelevisaUnivision, not only the iconic content that we've had for over 70 years on both sides of the border, both in Univision and Televisa, but most importantly for me is the fact that we are connected to the Hispanic community. I always say that we are the voice of Hispanics, and it's an incredible honor to be able to be the CEO of this company, to bring connection, community, and our culture of Hispanics all together through our networks.
That was wonderful. You're a little bit more humble than I was hoping, so I'm going to embellish a little bit here. TelevisaUnivision has more than just a connection with the community. It's a pillar. It's an institution of the community. In many ways, it is the place it's the town square. It's where the community has always come since I was a little boy also, that would come to get information about what is happening, not just in neighborhoods, not just in geographic localities. And for me, it was Los Angeles, but nationally. What are the stories that are driving the people that are increasingly making up this country, this new America that is emerging? So it is an incredible opportunity for you to be the helm of something like this. It also comes with an incredible responsibility and an obligation. And one of the things that Televisa does, and Univision has done for some time now, is you guys conduct polling and research to quantify the sentiment of the community, to kind of understand where it's at, what it's interested in, what our aspirations are, what our fears are. And you just came out with a poll just a few days ago that was conducted. And I was hoping you could share a little bit, Daniel, about what the poll found and kind of what the mood of the electorate, as we would call it. What is the sense of Latino America right now? What are we thinking about? What are we aspiring to? What are we afraid of? What are we worried about?
Great question, Mike. And thank you for a less humble introduction to what Univision really means to Hispanics here in the United States. I'll answer the question with a preamble. I became CEO of this company a year and a half ago. It was actually a month and a half before the presidential elections. And I was listening to how both sides of the aisle, both the Democratic and the Republican side of the aisle, were addressing issues to what they thought was connecting to the Hispanic community. And what I learned very, very quickly, literally, we had Vice President Harris did her town hall on Univision. President Trump did a town hall on Univision. We were the only network to actually host a town hall for both candidates. No other network in the United States had both candidates, obviously, because of the importance of the Hispanic audience. And when I would sit with both campaigns, I'd listen to what they thought was important to Hispanics. And they would talk about authoritarianism. They would talk about abortion, about transgender rights, about the economy, about border security. And they're two different sides of the border security question. When I looked, because we have local and national coverage, we have local radio, we have local TV, we were getting a lot of information from everywhere that we operate, and essentially every major city in the United States we have presence in. The feedback that we were getting was their messaging is way off. I'm not saying that the issue of abortion or other areas are important. They're obviously important. But what really mattered to Hispanics in 2024 was the economy and how it was impacting their pocketbooks. And we know that our community, our Hispanic community, is one of the most affected when prices go up, when healthcare prices go up. And I was actually dumbfounded in talking to some of the campaigns that they were completely off in their messaging, just completely off. And we'd say to them, that you're not listening to what Hispanics care about. And particularly if you look at the data, and you know this as well as I do, between 2020 and 2024, 50% of new voters are Hispanic.
Right.
And that number is accelerating. And now to answer your specific question,
That's a jaw-dropping number, by the way. That is extraordinary, the growth
Really
that's
big.
coming online.
It's incredible. But not only is 50% of new voters are Hispanic, and as that is accelerating, but they're also becoming extraordinarily active. And, Chuck, you saw this with Talarico. When he engaged with them, they responded then. They came out en masse. We saw this. I'm in New York right now, just over the state border with Cheryl and Chitarelli. She outspent Chitarelli almost double digits in New Jersey on our network, and she connected with a Hispanic audience. And as a result, you saw it. You saw it the same thing in Crockett and Talarico. He engaged with us on our sports, our soccer. Here's actually a fascinating stat. 70% of all soccer that is shown on TV in the United States, both English and Spanish networks, is on Univision.
Wow.
We are the home of soccer. So Hispanics love our soccer. On our music shows. So we actually connect with the Hispanics. So to your point on the polling that we did,
yeah,
we partnered with Harris, the polling firm, and what came out very similar to what was in 2024. The things that mattered the most for Hispanics was all about affordability. 76% said that the cost of living and inflation is incredibly important. And that is cost of housing, cost of healthcare, and obviously the cost of groceries. That was issue number one. That was issue number two. That was issue number three.
Yeah.
Everything else was absolutely secondary to what really mattered. And then the other part that I actually found really, really fascinating about this is, and this is to how active this voter base is that we found that 82% agree of the people that were interviewed agree that Latino voters are absolutely a critically deciding factor in these elections. So now they're saying not only do we have a large number, but they also recognize that their vote really matters.
They're aware of it.
And they're going out and they're and they're voting with the ballot. And the last one, which is again harks back to 24, and we see it again. You both live in bicultural worlds. I'm sure in your home, I face this, and you probably face this. When your parents speak to you in English, you obviously listen to your parents. When they switch to Spanish, you really pay attention. Something really important has just happened, right?
I never heard it that way, but that's so true.
It is.
Yeah,
and
it is
we all
true.
live it. And we come across this over and over again, and it's the common mistake that advertisers, both on commercial advertisers, whether it's like a toothpaste or a beauty company, all the way to political candidates, they think that they can reach Hispanics and connect with Hispanics by advertising on English media. And the data shows, in the polling, so many of them, that message that they see, they may be watching TV in English and they see an ad, it doesn't stick. But when they're watching it in Spanish on our network, that resonates. And the most important part of that is they feel that the candidate is listening to them and talking to them versus just talking to a general population, but not really listening. And I'll add just one anecdote. I was in DC a couple of weeks ago, and I was meeting with an advisor to one candidate, and she came up to me and said, "Hey, I just want to see if this resonates with you, because there are three themes that we're going to be focused on to try to reach Hispanics." I said, "Okay, sure, absolutely. What are they?" And one was affordability. I said, "Yep, that makes sense." The other one is what's happening in Greenland and in Iran. Okay. And then the third one is corruption. And I said, "I don't think you're listening. Yes, all these issues are important. I'm not going to deny that they're important. What's going on in Iran right now is important. Like, you're not listening to what Hispanics really care about. They care about those three things, and they're all about affordability, affordability, and affordability.
I wish we had room for another co-host here, Chuck. Because I bring Daniel on here, we could just do the Latino Football podcast with him.
One
It's
Texas
so on message
Mexican
with
at a
what we're talking
time. And Daniel's a real Mexican, not a fake Mexican like me with this dumb accent. I'm the one over here going, Univision, like white people do. But I'll tell you, I never walked into my grandma Rocha's house where there wasn't two things happening at the same time. She was at the Mogajete making hot sauce, and Univision was on the TV every time I literally walked into my grandmother's house. But I digress. It brings back good memories. Daniel, my question is this. Is we all talk about on this podcast ad nauseum, Mike from the Republican perspective, me from the Democratic perspective, but there's something that pushes me and Mike together, which is the love of our people. We may think of different ways to get there, but we want our people to have the most power. And we know the more that our voters are swing voters, as they've proven, they'll vote overwhelmingly for Donald Trump, but they overwhelmingly voted for James Talarico because they're looking for a home. They're looking for somebody who's speaking to them to the point you're talking about exactly, Daniel. So my question is this, is that we've seen advertising done right. We've seen advertising done wrong. It's complicated to white consultants who are like, oh, the Latinos will just see the English. And some Latinos will. Oh, we'll just do it in Spanish. Well, then maybe the English speakers don't. You got to have a comprehensive approach to advertising to reach a complex group of people like us. But Daniel, you're exactly right. In Spanish, you go, oh, a signal. Oh, I better pay attention. There were two people last cycle that did this well, in my opinion, really well. And that was Ted Cruz for the Republicans against Colin Allred. I thought he, for the first time, advertised heavily in Spanish and in English, trying to reach a Latino electorate against Colin Allred, who, in my opinion, didn't run a very good campaign in reaching Latinos. I want you to talk about that. And then also Ruben Gallego on my team, where I worked, where I was a senior advisor, we started spending early in Spanish, early in English, targeting Latinos, but a real heavy emphasis on the Spanish. And you saw the results. We overperformed. Cruz wins when Colin Allred raised $30 million, spent all this money lost. Talk about what you think campaigns get right with those two examples and some things that they miss.
Absolutely. And I couldn't agree with you more. So I lived in California before moving to Dallas. I now live in Dallas. And a person who lives very, very close to me in Dallas is a pretty significant Republican operative. This is in 2021. And he came to me and he asked me, look, we're as a Republican Party, we're really trying to get much closer to the Hispanics. And we're thinking ahead to, at this point, it was 3 years before the 2024 election. And they said, we're starting to build these community centers so that Hispanics can connect with us as a Republican Party. And what I thought was really smart about that is they were investing ahead of the curve. And I know Democrats have done this. It's not just a Republican thing. Ahead of the curve, because one of the big mistakes that candidates make is we've got 2 weeks left before the election. Let's start targeting. Let's start sending messages to the Hispanic community. And if there's one thing that, and to your point, one thing that I learned immediately when I first became CEO is that the Hispanic vote is no longer a Democratic vote. It used to be you knew that they were going to show up and vote for Democrat. That is no longer the case. It is now an issues vote. And you saw it in 2024, how it leans so much more Republican than they ever had. And now you're starting to see it in the polls that they're focused on the issues. I think that's actually a good thing for candidates. That's good because you can actually then understand what your electorate really cares about and talk about the issues that really matter. So mistake number one is you don't engage throughout for the long haul. You assume that you're just going to do a one week blitz or 2 week blitz, and all of a sudden they're going to get convinced. Number two, you mentioned two Hispanic candidates who speak Spanish. A very common mistake that politicians make is they say, I don't speak Spanish, so I'm going to look in my staff and see who has a Hispanic name and have that person go show up on radio, show up on TV, show up on the newscast, because I don't know what I'm going to say to them because I don't speak the language. The candidates who show up to our news, show up to our radio programs, even if they don't speak Spanish, go so far because our listeners say this person cares enough to actually show up, not just to send someone who's Hispanic in their staff. And the last part, and Ted Cruz did this very, very well. He actually advertised in both English and Spanish language and tailored the message to what Hispanics cared about. And you saw it. You saw it actually. He's historically been very, very connected to the Hispanic community in Texas. But as he was building his campaign, he had a radio component to it. He had a TV component to it. And he showed up. He showed up, not only him as a candidate, but also in his political messaging. And the numbers immediately started, diverting to what was people thought was going to be a very close election, and he ended up winning. And you saw that with Gallego as well. But the one thing I say whenever I meet any candidate who's not Hispanic, I say, don't make the mistake of not showing up just because you don't speak the language. We've got our newscasts are some of the highest rated newscasts in the United States. So for instance, in LA, we're the number one news, not the number one Hispanic news. We're the number one news. Yeah, the same thing in Miami. Same thing in many of the cities where the Hispanic vote is so important. Do the basic, show up for the community and listen.
So you mentioned one thing that I thought really needs to be driven home a little bit more, which is in 2024, our vote split basically 50-50. And everybody was talking about this dramatic rightward shift, which was true and accurate. And we looked at it and everyone's trying to, figure out what happened. Some of us wrote books about it saying it was.
Oh, here we go.
2025, less than a year later, the vote swings back equally dramatically. This is the only swing vote in play, and it is the fastest growing segment in America. It is the least partisan. It is, you just said very well, this is an issues-driven, unaligned voter that is determining the outcomes of elections everywhere now. If you look at what happened in New Jersey and the New York City mayor's race, in Virginia and Manassas County, Miami, it happened in Miami, where Latinos were voting, Latino Cuban males were voting for, a white progressive woman over a Latino Cuban male candidate, the Talarico Crockett stuff, which Chuck is, was front row and center on, California, where you had these dramatic overperformances, and on and on and on. Have you seen a change in the political industrial complex where people are kind of finally getting it now? Or is there still just such a lack of awareness on what's to do and how to approach the community from either the consulting class or the elected class that you just are these guys are either never going to get it or it's still years off?
Wait, Daniel, also the political ad makers and the buyers, because a lot of times you'll have a well-intentioned candidate who wants to reach, and then the buyer or the consultant will say, to your point, Daniel, let's wait. They're late deciders. We'll go in at the end, blah, blah, blah.
That's right. That's right. Look, as I go into this, and I'm learning more in terms of how the process works. Mike, to your question, it really depends on the candidates who are advised by people who really understand, our community, like you two. You get it, and the results are so obvious.
Right,
it's so obvious. This is what ends up being frustrating when you say, "Really? Let me show you this example. Let me show you this other example. Let me show you the other one." I think the biggest issue that some campaigns have are that the buying process and how the decisions are made at the early stage are fundamentally flawed. They go for a broad-based approach, and then once you already have that mindset, then the whole scheme goes. And before you know it, the train has left the station and you're shooting in the wrong direction. And that's what I found in the 2024 election. It was just such a head scratcher when I was listening to pretty prominent campaign leaders, and I'm saying, do you realize how important this demographic is? Do you realize that your message is not resonating? Yes, it is. It's not resonating.
Yeah.
No, it is. I can show you the data. That data is created by agencies, or I don't know where this data is coming from. It's wrong. No, it's right. Okay, wait and see. And, I remember election night, I was looking at it. I was looking at the numbers, and I was saying, you look at state by state, it's this Hispanic vote is going to be the determinant vote. It's happening again in 2026. And you look at it and say, why aren't you listening? And I think part of it is, to your point, is the process is such that the inertia of how things were done in the past just kind of continues. So yeah, okay, maybe that's a fringe, and maybe we'll do a little bit over here, but this has worked for us in the past. Well, the past, which was 6 years ago, 8 years ago, is not the present. So not only do you have a higher number of Hispanics voting, as I said earlier, a very active base that is coming out and realize that their voice really, really matters. Our data shows it. And then the data points of your spend and how you're communicating with them is not resonating. We get Hispanics. We get how to communicate with them because we live by that.
Yes.
Right? If our news doesn't resonate, we don't get the ratings. If our dramas, if our sports don't resonate, we understand how to connect with them. And what I love about Univision is that we go from hyper local all the way to the national level.
Right.
So if you have a worker who is in construction and really trying to make ends meet, you know what that person's doing? He's listening to our radio. You have a head of a household who is making their favorite breakfast or the lunch, or went to pick up the kids and bring them back to school. You know what they're doing? They're watching El Gordo y la Flaca and Despierta América.
Mm-hmm.
So we're in the business of understanding what our what messages and what our community wants, and then we also bring the information that is so relevant, and that's why our news is so highly rated. My job, obviously, I have a commercial interest, but my fundamental job, and the reason why I'm so passionate about what it is that I do, is if we're going to represent the voice of Hispanics, we have to be loud with every single candidate, every single campaign, and explain to them what really matters to our community and help them connect with our community. I want the best outcome for Hispanics in the United States. And my job is to make sure, just like you both are doing, and such a great job of educating the campaigns. How does the Hispanic voice get to your campaigns and to what it is that you're trying to do for the U.S. and this incredibly important demographic?
So we've talked a lot, and Daniel, you should know that there's a bunch of brown nerds that listen to this podcast, and we love you all, you little brown nerds who look like Mike Madrid. There's very few Mexican rednecks but me listening, but I digress and say, look, we got a lot of important races coming up where the Latino vote is literally the difference, just like it was for James Talarico. Me and Mike talk about the swing vote, the Latino vote in many, many of these races, and I'm going to talk about a few of them and get Daniel's reaction, are the key to success. And I'm going to break some of these down. And then, Daniel, if you want to give your comments to them after I'm finished. One is, and it's coming up in this quarter in June, which is this giant open, I like to call it a battle royale of the California governor's race. Democrats, Republicans, they all got their own little niches of who Mike knows. Mike's forgotten more about this than I'll ever know about it, but I know enough about the Latino vote to know that they will be the determining factor. Mike talked last week about a new poll that he had gotten from Latino voters in California, and where there were two white folks beating two Latino candidates. So, and then you've seen this week Steyer going up with Spanish language. You've seen Swalwell's IE going to get ready to start doing in Spanish. I'll report in Politico this week. They all know that Latinos in California is like its own country. And I'm not just talking about Sacramento. I'm not making fun of Sacramento, Mike, no more. But in California, Latinos, and I want you to talk about that, Daniel, but then also think out to these other giant states where we're going to have these big races coming up. Texas, governor and a Senate race. Arizona, governor's race. Florida, a Senate race, and a bunch of targeted congressional seats that sit all along the Texas Rio Grande Valley. There's a new congressional races down in Miami where a broadcaster just announced yesterday this big race down there. But let's start with this California governor's race, because I think that's the biggest opportunity next for us to have the impact.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And by the way, I love the fact that you're on separate sides of the aisle, but you get along so well and you speak the same language. So, I commend.
We're both a little bit of outsiders in our own party. We'll just say that.
There you go. But if you two can get along, then maybe we can all get along.
That's right.
But in terms of California, it's the same thing that's happening in the rest of the country. The assumption that the Hispanic vote is going to continue voting in the way that they have, 8 years ago or 15 years ago is no longer the case. And this assumption that, if you're a day laborer, you're not going to vote Republican, or that Republican is the party of the rich. They don't look at it that way, and that's not in their perception. It really comes down to who is the candidate that's talking to us, understands our issues, and is going to be able to address our issues. And that's what really matters. So whether it's in California, whether it's in Texas, whether it's in Georgia, you go state by state, and there are very, very few states and very few campaigns where the Hispanic vote is not going to be determinant, where it's even remotely close. And that's, some I've heard of will make the argument and say, well, so long as we can get 30% of the Hispanics, vote in our favor. Yeah, you're missing 70%, and that 70% is going to make the big difference. In the data that we have, there was in Texas, with the amount of advertising that happened in Texas. In our survey, it showed that 1 in 5 people recall seeing a Spanish ad, which means that 25% of people were completely deaf to any political message. It's 25%.
Yeah.
The other 75% probably saw the political message, and to a lot of them went in one year and went out the other year. That's what really matters. And as I said, like, my ask of anyone who has any political aspirations, whether it's in 2026 or beyond, when you're thinking in 28 or 30 or other years out, now is the time to connect with the Hispanics. If you ignore the Hispanic vote, you ignore at your peril. And if there's anything that history shows, you ignore the Hispanic vote, you're going to lose.
It's every election now too, and everywhere. It's like at some point, this is like I was telling Chuck this before. I wish I was like a 22-year-old political consultant just starting now, because it used to be just like Florida, Texas, California. Now it's like North Carolina's race. It's going to matter. Ohio, it's going to matter. Montana, Tennessee, and it's true. Every election in the year 2025 and so far in 2026, and certainly in the midterms, it's like the Latino vote. That margin is everything. It is the deciding vote. And whether you get 60% of it or 55% of it or 80% of it, whoever's fighting for it and gets it wins. Like, that's the story. There's not a lot of candidates that are losing the Latino vote that are winning elections. Like, it's not happening anymore. And so you're really at this real central point of it all. I'm really fascinated by this data point. I'm going to steal it from you if I could, that half of all new registrants are Latino, Hispanic in this country. Like, if that doesn't talk about the tsunami that's coming, I don't know what does. We also know, Daniel, that this segment, this younger Latino segment, over-indexes online. And I know TelevisaUnivision has a strong presence there too. Could you talk a little bit about that too, so that people are aware that it's not just like when I was a kid and we would kind of walk in and sit down with our abuelitas and listen to Univision, but it's seamless now. It's a big part of multi-generational, multimedia, multi-platform experience of being Latino.
Absolutely. So we have our streaming service, which has all the great content catalog all the way from 1930s to the most recent.
Is that right?
Called VIX, yeah. Huh. And it is actually. It's not surprising. It's the fastest growing subscription business in the United States.
I'll bet. Yeah.
Obvious. We started 3 years ago, and it's done exceptionally well because it has such great content that our Hispanics in the U.S. are connecting with. But one thing I'll add is I worked for almost 2 decades at Google, and there's one thing that I've learned with these digital platforms is they have a lot of data, and their targeting is oftentimes flawed. So, for instance, like if you watch a Bad Bunny video, the algorithm will start assuming that you're Hispanic, but you're not necessarily Hispanic. Bad Bunny is actually now national. You saw it in the Super Bowl. Facebook has these same targeting issues. If you're on VIX, you're 99.9% probability you're Hispanic, right? It's the content that Hispanics love. Right. It's what they connect with. And then on top of that, we've actually built a demographic targeting that can identify through our household graph where the Hispanics are anywhere in the United States. Our data set is incredibly precise because it includes our streaming service, it includes our digital sites, it includes our local TV, it includes our national TV, and it also includes third-party data that we aggregate to make sure that we are targeting the right people. So if any campaign is really trying to identify and target a Hispanic, we know where they are.
Yeah.
The other platforms sometimes know where they are, and sometimes and oftentimes they completely misfire. What we offer from an overall communication and connection to the Hispanic community is, I said, we're from national to hyper local, and it's from national TV all the way to local TV to local radio, and connected through VIX and through our household graph. If you want to find a Hispanic, we'll deliver them for you.
Yeah, I had no idea. Real quick, I had no idea, Chuck, that existed. Have you been buying with that?
Yes, but I didn't tell Republicans. Hang on, Daniel. Well, don't give us all the secrets out there now. Damn it.
That's an incredibly.
Let me pull on that, Mike, because that's where I was going to go with this, because Daniel kind of let the cat out of the bag of how I've been winning all these races. But let me say it this way: is that I have been running campaigns for 36 years, and I've watched the industry change a lot. But I learned pretty quickly, even before Daniel was there. I've seen a lot of staff come and go in those political departments, but there's one thing that was constant throughout all of that, is they had a wealth of information on our community. So if I am being asked by Bernie Sanders to go into Nevada or go into Arizona and talk to Latinos for Bernie Sanders, a guy that doesn't scream Latino to nobody, I would go to Univision and be like, okay, let's talk about this market. And how much of it do you have? How much of it does the one thing across all the board is they dominated all the markets. So I could get most of my answers in one call. And then I would dig into what me and you talked about on the podcast, which is a layered communication.
Yeah.
And Daniel, Mike likes to talk about him writing a book. I wrote a book too. It's called T.O. Bernie. And in that book, I talked about buying Spanish radio in Las Vegas for 6 months during the day, when nobody else would buy Spanish radio, because the white consultants would say, let's buy morning drive time and evening drive time, because that's how they advertise to white people. Not knowing what me, you, and Daniel knew, which was Latinos on top of a roof in Las Vegas are plugged in with their earphones all day long, listening to the music. Right. Yeah. And in the book, I made the example of saying, have you ever been in your hotel room in Las Vegas, left to go work out or go eat breakfast like Mike, and then come back to the room? And when you get back to the room, the maids already beat you there. And what do you hear playing from the bedside table radio? Spanish radio. That's being culturally competent of things that I learned by working with this TV and radio department at Univision to know who's listening and what stations are they on and where can I do something a little different. That 6 month of Spanish radio helped Bernie Sanders win every single Latino precinct in Nevada in that caucus, because I was doing that for a long time. Daniel, you want to add to that?
It's no. It's exactly right. It's absolutely exactly right. That's the part. Let's face it. A lot of the decision makers don't understand our demographic, don't understand Hispanics. And they make these broad-based assumptions. Those broad-based assumptions have proven wrong. And the definition of insanity is, if you keep doing the same thing over again and you get a bad outcome, you expect to get a new outcome the next time you do it? No. And it's getting even more severe now for the issue that I mentioned. The Hispanics are a force to be reckoned with. It's growing in terms of the electorate, and they're incredibly motivated. We've had conversations with some of the candidates that are fighting for their primary elections, just like what happened with Talarico. And some of the feedback we get, well, we're not going to engage with Hispanics now. We're going to engage with them, when the midterm elections happens. Look at Talarico. Look at what he did. He engaged early. He engaged right. He had the right message. He connected with the events that Hispanics care about, sports, music, that resonated really well. They showed up. He won. So why wait?
Last question, Mike.
Yeah, this is going to be an important one. And just for the record, we're going to put, Univision's deck and some of the poll findings in the
that's a good idea.
In the link below, so that people can kind of walk through this and kind of see that it's not just Mike Madrid saying this for years, that the economy matters, it's driving people. There's a whole prioritization of the range of issues that are motivating Latinos. At this moment, this poll is just a week old. Okay, this is really important to kind of understand that.
With people that just voted in Texas.
People that just voted. I mean, this is the freshest, perfect data to really understand this. This is going to be a tough question, and not that you haven't been honest, but I really need you to be really honest here. I don't mean to put you in a bad spot. You've lived in California. You've lived in Texas. What I want to know is which state has the best Mexican food.
Daniel, you do not have to answer this question.
Why is it California?
So I have a definitive answer for that. And the answer is...
See there, that's it. I knew that this was going to happen. I just knew it. He's saying Texas. I can read his lips. He's saying Texas, Mexican food. He's not going to disown his family because he was over there. Look, Daniel, we want to have you back on the podcast, but also we have an open invitation, and we're going to roll something out here with you on for our listeners to know, because I want you to come, and I want you to come be a speaker. But me and Mike Madrid are going to put together the Latino Vote Summit, first annual in Washington, D.C., where we're going to bring together hundreds of Latinos, thought leaders, Democrat, Republicans, business labor, industry, environmentalists, everybody in one room to come up with what we demand as a community, which is the Latino agenda. Daniel, I'd be honored if you could come. I'll get you and your staff a date. It's coming up in the middle of June. We want you to be there. We want to have other Latino CEOs there, other Latinos from entertainment and all around to come to D.C., but I'll give you the final word, and you don't have to commit because I'm going to make you come.
Well, look, I applaud what you're doing. I think it's fantastic. I'll do my best to be there. This is obviously incredibly important. And I'll say to your listeners, and obviously to both of you, TelevisaUnivision is the voice of Hispanics. Please use us as a resource. We have a lot of information. We have a way for you to be able to communicate and connect with this important demographic. But we're also here as advisors. Obviously, we have a commercial interest, but even beyond that, I want to be there for any candidate who really wants to understand our community. We have incredible insights. We have these polls, and we're going to be doing many more polls leading up to the midterm elections, because we want candidates to understand who we are and connect better with us and solve the issues that are important to every single one of Hispanics here in the United States.
Thank you for being on. And for the listeners, don't forget to like and subscribe. Don't forget to click on the deck that's going to be down below in the notes. If you want to see what this recent poll numbers, you and Mike Madrid, y'all can all go geek out. Don't forget, if you're lucky enough to still have your mom and your daddy, give them a call, tell them you love them today. And until next week, we're gone.